Welcome back. For many folks, President Trump is doing exactly what they want him to do, breaking a lot of dishes, saying things that a lot of folks are thinking, a refreshing breath of fresh air from the politicians that have ruled the roost for way too long. But to others, Trump is a dangerous wannabe dictator, taking down the very institutions that hold our republic together. Either way, you can't say it's been boring, unless, of course, you're a millennial. As the LA Times just reported, by next year, millennials born between 1981 and 1996 are projected to outnumber baby boomers born between 1946 and 1964. But they go to the polls in staggeringly small numbers. In the 2014 midterm elections, turnout among 18 to 20-year-olds was at 15%, among the lowest in the national election since the voting age was changed from 21 in 1971. And joining us for more are Alex Anaki of the Sarasota Democratic Party, Raymar Tirado from the Sarasota Underground, Reagan Fox, and Amabella Rudd of Gen Z Votes. Welcome to you all. Reagan, you know, I first met you a couple weeks ago when you were driving around the former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley to a political event in our area, and I'm wondering, Martin O'Malley ran for president last time around. What was the reaction of all your friends back at school?
So there's mixed reactions. Lots of people didn't know who he was until I had to Google his name. And a lot of people knew who he was and they were ecstatic about it. But you know, there's a good mixture of people that don't know and people that know, but it's about 80% people that don't know.
I would imagine that was very exciting for you.
Yeah.
What kind of feeling do you have when it's really not that exciting to a lot of the kids that you go to school with?
I feel like you should know because it's your right to know, and these are officials that represent you.
Right. And Amabella, you come from a different political outlook. You're more aligned with the Republican Party. Is it the same thing amongst your friends in school?
When I go back to tell my friends, you know, what I'm doing and how involved I am, a lot of people are really taken back by it, and how I think it's something to do with how inspired I am by watching my mom advocate at DC, and that inspires me to go want to make a difference, and people seeing that and are inspired by it. So I kind of have a different experience with among my friends.
But are there other kids at school that, you know, no matter, you know, whatever your political view is, these are interesting times in Washington, D.C. Do you have a lot of schoolmates who just really could not care less?
A couple here and there, but once I talk to them and tell them how important this is, they really do have an open mind and, you know, decide that, you know, they do care about this, which is really awesome.
Raymar, you have the finger on the pulse of a lot of young people in town who are getting going in their professional careers. When you hear that in the last midterm, only 15% of those who are identified as millennials came out to vote, what's your reaction?
It's just more of the same, right? We see the same thing in the local elections. I think we saw like a sub 20% turnout in the last local election. The special election get the same thing. So I don't know, you know, like we work really hard to try to get people excited about it, but there's a lot of apathy, right? People think they can't make an impact, right? We're living in a world where there's just a lot of noise and, you know, we're just screaming at each other, right? And so people have just said, I'm not going to scream, I'm not going to participate, I'm going to like take myself out of that because I don't want to deal with the vitriol, right? Like, the statistics are showing that conservatives and independents are not sharing their political beliefs because they're being castigated by the left, right? And so we're so polarized right now that people aren't even talking about these things because it's just this vitriol. And so people have unplugged. Younger people, they don't like the system, they don't like the game, they don't want, like, we don't want to see that, right? Like that's the old school political game.
Alex, you got involved with the Margaret Good campaign, which was a really exciting special election that really kind of energized a lot of Democrats in our area. Why did you get involved, and what did your friends say about it when you did?
I got involved because I thought it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I mean, as someone who's been active in Sarasota politics since 2016, I never thought that a Democrat would have a chance of winning an election here. And I saw a real good opportunity with a qualified candidate, one who had the resources to win, in a political environment that made a lot of sense. People were not familiar with the election. I'm sure if I asked plenty of people, they might know who the current representative Margaret Good is, but they wouldn't know that she succeeded Alex Miller. They wouldn't know anything about state politics or the issues that impact people in Tallahassee. And I think part of the reason is because our politics have become so nationalized, especially for young people. The focus is so heavy on Washington, D.C., on President Trump, on Mitch McConnell, that when you talk about the local issues, like a lot of the work that they're doing on the county commission or the city commission or even the state house or state senate, people don't care because they don't see the impact that it has on their everyday lives.
It's not glamorous, right? It's not fun. It's not as polarizing. It's not as exciting. Not as many people are talking about it, right? So the local issues get shelved under the table, and the only people that care are the ones that take the time to get involved and to get, educated on the topics.
Do you have a hard time explaining why people should care?
Just look at who's in our Oval Office right now. Like, we want more. Like, is Kanye going to be the next president? You should care. Right? Like, Oprah Winfrey is not a president. Like these are not options. Trump 10 years ago was not a political option for president, right? Like, he had aspirations for the last 30 years to get into office, but it was not a possibility for someone like that to do it. And we're literally getting to the place where it doesn't matter what your political mindset is, it's your popularity contest, right? Like, how many Twitter followers does Trump have? That's where he gets his game on, like, literally all the time still. And so we've never had a situation like that, and it's crazy to think that who's our next political leader going to be? All
right, we are just getting warmed up. We'll have much more on millennials and politics right after we check the first alert weather, so stay with us. Welcome back. We are talking about millennial voter apathy, and joining us for more are Alex Anaki from the Sarasota Democratic Party, Raymar Tirado from the Sarasota Underground, and Reagan Fox and Emma Bella Rudd of Gen Z Votes. You know, we had that terrible tragedy in Parkland a while back, and David Hogg, who is a young man who went to the high school in Parkland and has really been out there, was quoted as saying, young Americans are absolutely taken advantage of because we don't get out and vote. In the aftermath of Parkland, we saw people not only from South Florida, not only from around Florida, including Sarasota, but around the country, basically getting involved and saying something has to be done about school safety. Did you notice in your own school people saying, look, in order for things to change and for us to become more safe, we have to have a voice and express it?
Yes. So at our school, we actually had a school walkout that had about 550 students participate in it. For about 3 weeks, it was just straight talking government class about the issue of guns and needing to pass legislation for guns. So kids got more involved when it came to politics and were checking the news every day.
Emma Bella, is that going to have a lasting impact?
I believe so. Seeing firsthand how everyone was so involved and seeing how this one day could probably affect us. If we were scared going to school after that, we experienced firsthand threats that would impact us. So seeing my friends understand, voicing our opinions and how we can change the works of schooling, and so seeing everyone sign up for the walkout and seeing everyone go out there and make signs, it was just so impactful. And they realized they have a voice and that they can go out there and make a difference. And ever since then, it's really changed.
This is where I get a little worried, though, because the millennials have also become, and the younger voter bloc have become, a statistical anomaly for an older demographic who's looking to control power. Right? And so we're seeing anytime there's something happens, it becomes, how can we polarize this voice to start pushing the agenda forward? Right? And so yeah, you get a lot of young activists talking about school shootings and different things, but experiencing a tragedy does not make you qualified to make policy decisions. And so we have to be really careful when we activate a voter bloc, that voter bloc is also being educated in a rational way and understanding the policy issues from a nuanced level, not just at a social media, headline length bullet point overview of the concepts.
I think it's underestimating young voters to say that they're not going to do the research or to build that knowledge. I mean, there's plenty of older voters who have been making decisions for quite some time now that honestly haven't made that much of an impact. And going back to what we talked about with whether that's a lasting impact with young voters being involved politically, whether they're going to vote, I don't know. A lot of people want to march. They marched after Donald Trump was elected president. They marched after Parkland. But are they going to vote? I'm not sure, and I haven't seen evidence to say they will, and we'll find out in November. But honestly, a lot of young people still might hold the same political beliefs. The Republican Party hasn't changed its views that much on gun policies, even after Parkland, after Orlando, after Las Vegas. So what's going to say they will now? People aren't single-issue voters, so even these young people who are outraged about shootings, as they rightfully should, they're still probably going to vote for the same people if they even vote at all. And that's a whole other story as to why they're not voting. They might march and they might do it for the social media posts, or they might do it because of that, but will change come of that?
Well, the biggest problem is you start castigating, you get into this, and I don't want to go into gun control debate, but it happens all the time, where you start castigating, let's say, the Republican Party for, like they're advocates of school shootings. And so we don't get anywhere in the media because you typecast a whole group of people in support of school shootings because they're pro-gun. Right? And so you create an environment where we can't even have a rational discussion, and so again, you create apathy, people step away from the argument.
On the other hand, I mentioned that young man, David Hogue, he also has been castigated by a lot of people who are for Second Amendment rights as being manipulated and not stopping to consider for a moment that this young man may be standing up for what he believes in, and a lot of other young people are doing the same.
Sure, and I don't see any reason why they shouldn't. I think you should be able to support and speak out in whatever, whatever your political affiliation or what you support or whatever, but once you step out into that limelight, there's repercussions to that, and people then have to be able to challenge those ideas. And if we can't dissect the ideas on the merit of the ideas, not the identity of the people discussing the ideas, then nothing matters.
Let me ask you all this, and this is, back in 2008 when Barack Obama was running for the first time, I believe that millennial voting was really elevated, especially at college campuses, because whether you're a Republican or Democrat, this was the first African American president, African American who was nominated by their party to be for president, and it captured the imagination of a lot of people. Since then, voting on college campuses has really gone down, and the question becomes: does it take a first of its kind to get people on college campuses to come out and vote?
Obama was hip. Obama got it, right? Like, he could speak to the young people and they understood and they resonate. They spoke the language. We're dealing with a Washington, D.C. that does not speak to anybody under the age of 50, right? Like, we just don't speak your language. You're talking to people that you're talking above us. And so Obama resonated with the people. So regardless of how you felt about the politics, you were like, that's my dude. I could drink a beer with him.
I'm sorry. So are you saying that it takes a hip candidate?
No, I'm saying it takes a candidate of the people. It takes somebody who can, nobody's representing the people in Washington. It takes somebody who can speak to us like they're not talking over us, like we can understand the issues, like we do have some sense of competence and that we can understand what's going on. We'll fix the problems. America's only ever fixed problems, right? Like, we can solve all the problems.
I think people also don't know how to vote, and that sounds kind of bad, but I mean, like the Sarasota County Supervisor of Elections, Ron Turner, does a great job. He goes into every single Sarasota County high school when people are seniors and registers them to vote. A lot of them, and I know as someone who just graduated from Pineview, are going to go off to college in somewhere other than Sarasota County. So even though we have these young people registered to vote, they might not have the resources to do so, or they might not know what's next. The next step for them would be voting by mail.
The other thing to add on to 2008 is in 2016 we saw Bernie Sanders, who captivated a lot of young college people.
But, Alex, you brought up an interesting point, because millennial voters, college-age voters, have really become a battleground here. A lawsuit has just been filed accusing Governor Rick Scott of suppressing young voters by not allowing polling places on college campuses. Now, you think about it, a lot of people live on campus. It's the most convenient place for them to vote, but almost as a tactic, it is alleged, Florida and as well as other states are not allowing polling on campus, which makes it more difficult for young people to come out to vote.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's really unfortunate, because that's who we should be reaching out to. That's who, they want to make a difference. We're trying to get our voice out there, and I think having polling right at the colleges would increase our numbers by significantly, in fact. So
I think what we're seeing is, like, we got to make a case for technology in polling. This is where we should be voting, right? Like, and with the blockchain, with technology that we have, we're probably 5-8 years out from seeing an opportunity where, like, we shouldn't be restricting people's access to vote because of where they are, right? It should be super convenient. We're making bank transactions, we're sending millions of dollars, all of our we could question how safe they are, but we're doing a lot of things digitally. Like, it seems like voting is an inconsequential task that we should be able to somehow digitize. And so we'll solve that problem, and I think that will fix a lot of this.
Well, that raises an interesting question. In some countries, the National Election Day is a national holiday, and people don't have to worry about whether or not they can take off from work or take off from school to go vote. Do you think part of the problem is that we have not kept up with the technology in making voting and voter registration as simple as possible?
I think so, for sure. But that's a problem with a lot of bureaucracy.
All right, so predictions here. In terms of, we're going to have a big midterm election coming up in just a couple of months. In the balance is control of Congress, and given what's going on in Washington and speculation that if the Democrats take over, they may move towards impeachment. the stakes could not be higher. Alex, do you think that's going to result in young people your age coming out to polls in numbers that we have not seen before?
I don't think it'll depend on the national outlook. I think it depends on the efforts of these individual campaigns to get people engaged. I mean, we just saw in Georgia, Stacey Abrams was the first black female nominee for the governor of a state, and that was because they had that grassroots energy, that momentum, those get out the vote efforts. And if young people are engaged in that, then they will. But it's not going to be enough for people to say young people are going to vote because they don't like Donald Trump, because a lot of them don't have the tools to vote, or they need more knowledge about these, like I mentioned earlier, these local candidates that are going to impact them.
Reagan, Emma, really short, do you get a sense that kids in your school are more apt to vote in November if they are at age than before?
I feel like we have to keep up with them. But if we keep up with them, they will vote.
Keep them engaged and know that they can make a difference and go out and vote, and having the right tools. You know, it's taking the different approach. It's approaching them through events and through their teachers and going that route, and that, I believe, will impact us.
All right, we have to take another short break, and we'll be back for final thoughts when we return. And our guests join us right now for final thoughts. And Alex, let me start with you. You know, we just had a debate on our show recently about the tax cut that was passed by Congress in late last year. Do you get a sense from people your age that they appreciate what it means now, but also, given the fact that it's adding a lot to our budget deficit, what it's going to mean to them in the future?
No, I think that if you look at Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign in 2016, you'll see what issues matter to young people. It's about affordable health care, it's about education, it's about equal rights. That's part of the reason why Barack Obama was so successful, because he fostered those issues and really made young people care about them. The tax reforms might get these targeted Republican voters, middle-class white women or older voters out to vote, but for young people, it's really about their livelihood in a way that's immediate to them. Can I afford my education? Can I afford health care? Will I have equal rights? So I think that's going to drive people in November.
Raymar, is our technology, or not utilizing our technology to its fullest, really holding us back in terms of millennial voting? That because you're busy in terms of trying to build your careers and make it in this economy, and a lot of people are simply not taking the opportunity to go to the voting precinct on Election Day.
I think for sure we could make it easier. I don't know that that's an acceptable excuse for not participating, right? It should be a responsibility, and so even though it's not easy, you should find a way to do it. But I for sure think we can start thinking about how do you make this process easier, how do you bring technology in to open that up so that you can get more participation, and then really it's about voter education and, again, bringing people up to speed on the issues in a broad way.
Now, Emma and both of you, you're involved with a very interesting project at your school in terms of getting younger people to vote, and it's a bipartisan effort. Could you explain that just a little bit?
So this organization we made, Gen Z Votes, is focused on centennials voting and getting kids pre-registered and registered to vote. We also want to start running, for instance, mock polls at school so kids can know how to vote. We want to build a website to where they can even just search their precinct on Election Day, or remind kids about early voting. And it's not just at our school, it's all around the county. We're doing it at different high schools.
And it's bipartisan. You have Democrats and Republicans. And, what's interesting is that you seem to be working together, which is something that's not done a whole lot of in Washington.
We see it's so important now, in our time, that we work together for, our cause, and getting people together to make the right decisions, get more people out voting. We want to do meet the candidates kind of events at our schools as well. We're going to start small, Riverview High School, and then we're going to go to Sarasota High School. We're going to get out there and get people to know our name and, make a difference.
All right. Well, thank you all. This has been a pleasure. And FYI, you can watch past discussions on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. We want to thank our guests for being here tonight. Alexei Anaki from the Sarasota Democratic Party, Raymar Tirado from the Sarasota Underground, Reagan Fox, and Emma Bella Rudd of Gen Z Votes.